Hello. Imagine a form of pollution that you cannot see, cannot smell, and cannot directly feel, yet it is slowly warming the entire planet. This invisible pollution is a greenhouse gas emission, commonly referred as GHG emission. Today, greenhouse gases are one of the primary drivers of climate change, responsible for rising global temperatures, melting glaciers, extreme weather and events, and changing rainfall patterns. But when did scientists first realize that greenhouse gases could affect Earth's climate? When did the world begin monitoring these emissions? And what global agreements have been created to control greenhouse gas emissions? In this video, we will explore what greenhouse gases are, how and when greenhouse gases monitoring began, major international agreements to control emissions, and the role of industries in greenhouse gas reduction. By the end of this video, you will have a clear understanding of history, science, and global policy framework surrounding the greenhouse gas emissions. So stay till the last. What are greenhouse gases? Greenhouse gases are gases present in Earth's atmosphere that have the ability to trap heat from the sun. To understand this, imagine a greenhouse used for growing plants. The grass, the glass walls allow sunlight to enter, but they prevent the heat from escaping easily. As a result, the inside of greenhouse becomes warmer than the outside environment. A similar process occurs in Earth's atmosphere. When certain gases absorb and re-emit infrared radiation, trapping heat and keeping the Earth warm. This natural process is known as greenhouse effect. Without the greenhouse effect, the Earth's average temperature would be around minus 18 degrees Celsius, making life as we know it impossible. However, the problem arises when the concentration of greenhouse gases increases significantly due to human activities. The most important greenhouse gases include carbon dioxide, methane, nitrous oxide, fluorinated gases such as hydrofluorocarbons, water vapor, which is almost abundant natural greenhouse gas. Among these, carbon dioxide is the largest contributor to anthropogenic climate change. So how does industrial revolution and the rise of emissions started? The dramatic rise in greenhouse gas began with industrial revolution, which started in the late 18th century in Europe. During this period, societies transitioned from manual labor and traditional agriculture to industrial manufacturing and mechanized production. Coal became the primary fuel for power generation, steel production, industrial processes, transportation systems such as steam engines. Later, the use of oil and natural gas further accelerated industrial development. While these energy sources powered economic growth, they also led the massive release of carbon dioxide into the atmosphere. However, it took several decades before scientists fully understood the long-term climate impact of these emissions. The first scientific prediction began in 1896. The first scientist to propose the relationship between carbon dioxide and global temperature was Svante Arrhenius, a Swedish scientist. In 1896, Arrhenius published a groundbreaking study suggesting that an increase in atmospheric carbon dioxide could raise the Earth's surface temperature. He estimated that doubling atmospheric carbon dioxide could significantly increase the global temperature. At the time, this idea was mostly theoretical and did not attract widespread attention. But later, scientific observations could prove that Arrhenius' predictions was remarkably accurate. Systematic monitoring of greenhouse gases began in 1958 when scientist Charles David Keeling started measuring atmospheric carbon dioxide concentrations. These measurements were conducted at Mauna Loa Observatory in Hawaii, a location chosen because of its relatively clean and stable atmosphere. Keeping Keeling developed highly precise instruments capable of measuring atmospheric carbon dioxide concentrations. The data produced a graph that is now famously known as Keeling Curve. This curve clearly shows a steady rise in atmospheric carbon dioxide levels. For example, 1958 atmospheric CO2 concentration was about 315 parts per million. Today it has increased to more than 420 parts per million. The Keeling curve provided the first clear evidence that human activities were rapidly increasing atmospheric carbon dioxide. The global scientific recognition. By the late 20th century, scientists began to realize the seriousness of climate change. In 1979, the first World Climate Conference was organized by the World Meteorological Organization. This conference brought together leading scientists from around the world. For the first time, the scientific community officially recognized that human activities could scientifically influence the global climate. This conference marked the beginning of coordinated international research on climate change. Creation of IPCC. A major milestone in climate science occurred in 1988 with the creation of Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change. The IPCC was established by United Nations and the World Meteorological Organization. The role of IPCC is to assess scientific research related to climate change, provide comprehensive climate report, guide governments in making climate policies. The IPCC does not conduct its own experiments but evaluates thousands of scientific studies worldwide. It, its assessment reports have become the most authoritative source of climate science information globally. The Rio Earth Summit, a major global policy milestone, occurred in 1992 during the Earth Summit held in Rio de Janeiro, Brazil. At this summit, countries adopted United Nations Framework Convention on Climate Change. The main objective of UNFCCC was to establish greenhouse gas concentration in the atmosphere at a level that prevents dangerous climate change. More than 190 countries signed this convention. The UNFCCC also established a system of annual international meetings known as Conference of the Parties. These conferences allows countries to negotiate climate policies and review the progress of reducing emissions. Then the Kyoto Protocol, one of the first legally binding global agreements to reduce greenhouse gas emission was the Kyoto Protocol adopted in 1997. Under the Kyoto Protocol, developed countries were required to reduce their greenhouse gas emissions. The protocol introduced several innovative mechanisms, including carbon trading. Countries that emitted less greenhouse gas than their allowed limit could sell the carbon credits to other countries. Clean development mechanism. Developed countries could invest in emissions reduction projects in developing countries. Examples include renewable energy projects, methane capture from landfills, and energy efficiency improvements. India became one of the largest hosts for clean development mechanism projects globally. Then the Paris Agreement in 2015. Perhaps the most important climate agreement in recent history is the Paris Agreement adopted in 2015. The central goal of Paris Agreement is to limit the global temperature rise to well below 2 degrees Celsius above the pre-industrial levels and ideally before below 1.5 degrees Celsius. Unlike the Kyoto Protocol, the Paris Agreement requires all countries, both developed and developing, to participate. Each country submits its own climate action plan known as nationally determined contribution. These plans outline how countries intend to reduce the greenhouse gas emissions. For example, India has committed to achieve net zero emission by the year 2070, while also expanding renewable energy capacity. By the way, I have already prepared a dedicated video on net zero. You can find the link in description below. The major sources of greenhouse gas emissions. Today, the greenhouse gas emissions originate from several major sectors. The energy sector is the largest contributor due to fossil fuel combustion in power plants. The transportation sector produces emissions from vehicles, airplanes, and shipping. The industrial sector generates emissions during manufacturing processes such as steel, cement, and chemical production. Agricultural sector releases methane from livestock and rice cultivation. Finally, the waste sector contributes emission through methane generation from landfills and wastewater treatment systems. Because of these sources, industries today play a critical role in reducing greenhouse gas emissions. The modern GHG monitoring and corporate responsibility. Today, greenhouse gas monitoring has become highly advanced. Governments and industries use several technologies, including satellite based monitoring, remote sensing technologies, continuous emission monitoring system, and carbon footprint assessment tools. Many companies now track emissions under the Scope 1, Scope 2, and Scope 3 framework, which means emissions from direct operations, purchased energy, and supply chains. This is now an important part of corporate sustainability and ESG reporting. Further, of the future of climate action. Looking ahead, the several strategies will be essential to reduce greenhouse gas emission. These include transitioning to renewable energy sources, developing carbon capture and storage technologies, expanding electric transportation system, promoting circular economy practices, advancing green hydrogen technologies. However, the success of this solution depends on global cooperation and policy implementation. Climate change is not limited by national boundaries, it is a challenge shared by the entire planet. Therefore, greenhouse gases may be invisible, but their effects are increasingly visible across the world. Today, rising temperatures, extreme weather events, glacier retreat, and ecosystem disruptions all point to the urgent need of climate action. Understanding greenhouse gas emission is the first step towards addressing one of the greatest environmental challenges of our time. If you find this video informative, consider subscribing to the channel for more content on environmental science, sustainability, and climate change. Thank you for watching.